I wanted to ask you, you had this incident when you were 6 where your
Yep.
best friend hurt you. And
Yep.
if you want to talk about that a little bit, do you think that that event, you know, changed your brain in essence and opened you up to this, understanding quantum physics, understanding the beauty in the world, understanding the love? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm curious how you understand that event.
Yeah. So I'll go into it a little bit. And actually, the my best friend at the time, this kid named Danny, we actually exchanged emails for the first time this past January. We hadn't spoken probably in 47 years. And I just reached out to him because I said what happened actually was the beginning of my journey of faith, really, was like that incident. So I said I grew up on military bases, and military bases are very safe. And you just think about it, inherently, it makes sense because everyone's working for the same company, the US government, and usually the same service, branch of the military. And so it's almost like a throwback to what you might imagine the 1950s in the United States could be. Like just this sort of no one locks their doors. You play with, the kids on your street. It's very communal, very safe. And also you've got your own military police, tons of weapons and tanks. So it's not like there's a lot of crime on a military base. For kindergarten through third grade, we lived out in town. So we lived in the civilian world, so to speak, in a town called Hyattsville, Maryland, just outside of the University of Maryland. And it was wild because obviously on base, all the houses look the same, and off base, not, they look completely different. Like it's wild. And my dad, this was the mid 70s, so the Vietnam War was just winding down, not a popular war in the country at the time, and there was kind of that presence in the atmosphere, at least from what I can remember. So Danny was my best friend. He had an older brother who was 3 years older than him, who was same age as my brother. So we inherently just naturally became friends. They had an older brother, David, also his name, who was 12. And this was in the age well before helicopter parenting. So as 6-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 12-year-olds, we would roam the neighborhood. Like we were just out and about. And Danny he used to go into these fits of rage. Like he would have, you might call it a temper tantrum, but when parents aren't around, it's a fit of rage. And sometimes we called him a spaz. And sometimes it would get so bad that his brothers would have to physically restrain him until he calmed down. And you never necessarily knew what was going to set Danny off. So one weekend, or I guess it was probably during the week, I think it must have been during the summer, but it was in the afternoon, we had found our way into a stranger's backyard, and there was some construction going on in the house. Again, this was the 70s, so the fact that we were in someone's backyard didn't really matter. We were kids and we're not going to be intimidated or stopped or anything. But there was construction in the backyard, and the way I remember it is David, the oldest one, said, "It's time to go home for dinner." And they lived a few, I don't know, 5 or 6 houses down from where we were. And then my brother and I lived a block away from that. Danny got really upset. He didn't like that, and his face just went red, like it just filled up with Kool-Aid. I mean, it was just that quick. And so his brothers start trying to calm him down. They're approaching him, and there must have been a hammer on the ground at his feet. So Danny picks up the hammer, and his brother Matt, his middle brother, just shouts, "Run!" And so I'm assuming we all turned to run. I turned to run. I remember there was this wall of green bamboo on the side of the house separating the yards, and hit me in the back of the head, and I was out. And the next memory I had was waking up at my house with my mom there. Danny and his mom were there. Danny had been crying. He gave me a coloring book. The memory that I had put out from that experience didn't come back to me until the pandemic, until the first few months of the pandemic. And I remember watching Danny's oldest brother, David, carry my body down to their house. And it wasn't like he was running, he was just walking, and my body was in his arms. And Danny was on one side, and my brother was on the other side, and Matt was there. And I was about 15 feet behind them. And it was a very gloomy picture. And I just couldn't get back into my body. Like I knew that was my inherently, I knew that was my body, but I couldn't get back into it. And I put that memory out until the pandemic and then realized, oh my gosh, I had an out of body experience when I was 6. Like how do you comprehend that as a child? You can't. So absolutely, because after that incident, I became more moody, I became more temperamental. I had trouble concentrating in school, and that showed up mostly with the sciences. Like I wasn't good at physics, chemistry. I struggled with math until I got to college. Creatively, I was on fire. I loved comic books. I loved Star Wars. I loved Dungeons and Dragons. I got something published when I was in high school for short story. My poetry won contests. I could draw. But there was this tremendous imbalance. And I think when coming back from Okinawa and having the sense that I wasn't fully present in my life, that's what led me to meditation. Meditation, I used to meditate even on active duty when I was in the Marines. And then even though I don't think that I was consciously planning on it, that's what led me to yoga as well, which ultimately then led to quantum physics. And that was for me the bridge between the science and spirituality that was lacking for a good part of my life.